I have this one bumpkin neighbor that likes to sit out on his porch and like sing in front of everybody, and it's something that I just kind of have to get over. But I pulled out my phone today and pulled up Google Chrome, and under the articles for you, there were some very telling articles that are about, not about me, but definitely related to me. Chernobyl, 33 years on, radioactive fallout still impacts Scandinavian farmers. Someday the U.S. will have to actually deal with its nuclear waste problem. Did I just say that wrong? Nuclear waste problem. Something about Stranger Things. I've never seen it. There were a couple. Yeah, those were the main ones. Those were the top ones in a row as well. And it is true. I definitely have an interest in most things nuclear. My interest largely stems actually in the nuclear world from this game, or rather the original version of this game, starting with the single player campaign, all gillied up, in which you go through Pripyat and into Chernobyl. And eventually, in front of nuclear reactor 4, you have the classic exchange with Imran Zakhaev, in which you blow off his arm. And through that, I was acquainted, and the map block. Through that, I was acquainted with the nuclear disaster of Chernobyl, and I was fascinated by it. And first, it started out with the game, and then it transitioned into Wikipedia and Google to see what this event was. What is the history behind it? Not just what did I learn from the video game. What research? What can I learn from this? And then you learned about the disaster, and I learned about the city of Pripyat. And then I saw images of the city of Pripyat, both in its state then and its state now, and it got me interested in a lot of things, and it particularly made me think a lot about the difference between the Soviet Union and the United States, and the differences between the ideological differences, which I think a lot of people already, especially like people my age, tend to forget, because we've never really lived in a world where it was Russia versus the USA, and like basically, the Western world at war with each other, so to say, because we think now that we're all on the same page in this kind of globalism kind of world. And so I think because of that, the world became a time capsule, or rather Pripyat became a time capsule of a particular moment in time. And I love seeing what that moment is. I love seeing what that looked like, what that specific point in time looked like, because you see it so presently just because everybody was evacuated. And so I one thing that I like, it's one thing for me to just be fascinated by the event and by the city and by videos exploring the exclusion zone and the reactor itself. But I actually what would in earlier recent years, I guess, I've been wanting to transition this opinion into something that had to do with the nuclear options, or I guess our nuclear options that we have now in regards to nuclear power, because that is kind of where the interest generated from the Chernobyl reactor used to power the Soviet Union. And now what kind of option that leads for us, as well as the Fukushima incident as well. So what are my thoughts on nuclear power? I think I was thinking one of the biggest reasons I think people are against it are because of the potential for disaster. And one of the biggest reasons that we think of, I think, at least in my head, I've always think of was, well, if, bad things can happen at Chernobyl, bad things can happen anywhere. And then researching, what that disaster was, what happened, and what actually went wrong with the level of incompetence that had been displayed as not just that night, but as a practice in running that facility. And so I think that the world as a whole has been able to responsibly handle nuclear power, as it is 20% of the United States power comes from nuclear power, and countries like France use 80% of its source of power as nuclear facilities. And So I don't think that the incompetence has to do with it anymore. I think the biggest problem at this point in time is the fuel source. What I mean, the not fuel source rather, but the fuel waste. What do you do with that? Is there a proper way to dispose of it? I believe the way that we dispose of it in the United States currently is it stays on facility in secure, confined, concrete structures, and it's guarded on the same facility that it happened, so it doesn't have to get on a truck and go out into the world. And I don't know that this is the best option, because at some point in time we're going to have full stores. We're going to have to do something about it. But those are my current thoughts on nuclear power and nuclear disasters. Let me know what your guys' opinions are in the comment section below.